A developing story, of course, an incident there at Top Bub as we rose this morning, gunshots and the reported death of a young man. Top Pub, a notorious flashpoint, especially when it comes to Kampala's entertainment and nightlife. It is not the very first time such an incident is happening at that particular spot. There was in the past, about 2008 thereabouts, when there was another shooting. Why it consistently stands out as one that has such skirmishes is also something that must be looked into, but like Stephen promises, we'll be getting the details a little bit later. Let's return to the studio and get underway with our Kickstarter as we look into the aftermath of the presidential and parliamentary elections here on Thursday as well as Friday. The picture across the political landscape is becoming clearer as many of the politicians are coming to terms with their losses, but also those that have triumphed actually, well, understanding the weight of the obligations as well as the responsibilities that await them in Parliament. This morning I have with me a former candidate in the Nakawa East race, Joy Chirabo. She'll be speaking to us about the grueling campaigns, but also what she makes of the political landscape and how things have played out. You're most welcome to MorningAtNTV, Ms. Joy Chirabo.
Thank you.
Welcome to Joseph Ocheno, political commentator, seasoned politician, and, if your words are anything to go by, the president of the Uganda People's Congress, should be.
Yes.
You're welcome to MorningAtNTV. Let me begin with Joy Chirabo. The election has thrust Uganda in the eye of the world. I know so many people looked at us in the run-up to the general election, expecting that what would play out would be a little bit different from an average banana republic. What played out has brought the debate of what nations across Africa regard elections and what elections actually mean for nations in Africa. That is all perspective. What's your take?
This election specifically has been characterized with great irregularities. I have not participated in past elections, but I don't think this election has been precedented given the characteristics that we saw. There has been heavy rigging, which was, in my view, planned months ago, because it wasn't a decision that was decided at the scene. It looked well orchestrated, planned, and some places even unnecessary. For example, if you say for President Museveni, he had already gained some momentum in this term, and it was so unnecessary to rig for him in order for him to attain a certain percentage. So, which has portrayed his win to be up for debate, yet it wouldn't even have been. Because we all know that progress is not necessarily, progress is a natural process that cannot be rushed. But given the budgets that were given out for mobilization and targets given to some of the people, they felt the need to give a certain percentage to the president and do a lot of rigging, which has actually made it seem like he did not actually win genuinely. Because I believe that the president usually wins most of the regions, and he's still suffering in Central. And even in Central, he had made progress. Maybe 10% progress, maybe 5%, which should be celebrated. But there's no room for celebrating it, because the election was a sham. And let's leave the presidential race. Now let's talk about Member of Parliament. The rigging that happened in Central, because personally I stood in Central, is going to affect each and I don't see anyone who is going to benefit from this. I don't see anyone who's going to benefit from the way things are going, and maybe the way things will continue to move. Because if you get people who did not even get a second or third position and declare them winners, what is the future of politics? What is the future of electoral process? What is the future of democracy? What is the future of mobilization? What is the future of media houses? Because it's something for you to even think about. You might not have a job in the next 5 years. What are you reporting? And who is following you? People are going to lose interest to follow politics completely. And that keeps all of us out of the economy. Because first of all, and I don't even see how the NRM party benefits, these people lost because they couldn't mobilize, even with heavy budgets. So how do you reward a person who has failed to even mobilize for their own president, failed to mobilize for themselves, and then you reward them? You're even making them worse, because I can predict that the next election they will not even try. They will keep sitting in those big offices using money for mobilization for personal needs. Because at the end of the day, they see that there is a chance of being declared even when they've not won. These people have been reluctant when they well know that they have to put in the work. How about now that they know that they don't have to put in the work? So even the NRM party is at a big loss.
Could we be more specific and cite examples maybe, especially when you speak about incidents of, as you put it, heavy rigging? I want us to have examples here so that we can fully understand the scope of your dismay at the rigging, both at presidential as well as parliamentary polls. Maybe Manakawa East, where you stood or participated, do you have what you can share vividly as cases of either altering of the choices of the people?
Yes, I can give examples of, we all know that in election there's always opinion polls ahead of the real polls. And if you see people emerging, people who are not in the opinion polls emerging at the end of the day, that they are now leading, it is a shame. And also we also saw people who are actually leading even after opinion polls, and they are leading on polling stations, and the vote was overturned at the end of the day. Because let us all agree that rigging is not new, it has been there. But this was not even rigging, it was forcefully declaration. We all went into these elections knowing that you have to work twice as hard as an NRM candidate because they rig. You understand? But we did not know that even after beating them, there will be forceful declaration. And this makes these people who have been declared more reluctant. So I'm even saying it does not help the NRM party.
Who was forcefully declared? Which constituency, which candidates, which races?
If you look at, let me not even speak for Nakawa East, because I'm a victim and everyone would say this is a rant of a loser, which I don't want. I don't want to ruin this conversation.
Right. That means you can cite another constituency where a declaration was.
But I don't want my conversation to be reduced to a rant. And that's why I will not talk about my constituency.
Okay.
Because it has always been the daily story that, oh, every loser says they've cheated them. I am definitely not number one. That one I can say. I'm not the winner. I'm not the one who was supposed to be seated in parliament today. But I'm definitely not the number that they will assign to me someday in the future, because up to now they have not given us our results. So even my hard work, I will never know what I attained. I will never know that all these years of campaigns, Joy Chirabu, you have garnered 10,000 votes. What did I do differently? What should I do differently? I cannot know. Even my supporters cannot know that the candidate we supported garnered this much support. That is stealing someone's hard work, which is terrible. And we are stealing young people's hard work to defend their fathers. What is the future of politics in this country? So, and leave alone us. Some of us were used as, we're not even considered. We were the grass in the battle between great elephants. So which was even worse for us. And by the way, winning is not necessarily winning. Some of us, our wins are, okay, you've gotten your 10,000 votes. It is your first time to stand, and you are this, and you can probably become this.
Better.
But if you steal this from me, you have taken everything. You have taken my 2 years, you've taken my sweat, you've taken everything.
Your hopes.
My hopes and everything. And the person you're giving it to, you're just teaching him how to not even try. You're teaching them how to continue not to mobilize, how to continue to take advantage of hard work of other people. And they are not going to benefit you. They are probably the most useless people you have. And that's why they've even lost. And even first-timers, they're stealing efforts from first-timers. So you are not even benefiting. But if you look at people like, let's say, Kampala Central, you look at people like maybe Minsa Kabanda, in the opinion polls, she was nowhere. Completely. I would have believed Honorable Luzi taking it before I believe Minsa Kabanda taking it. But the way everything overturned, and all of a sudden, the race was between NRM and NUP. That is the picture they're trying to paint. But this race was about individuals. You understand? So, them stealing all this for Minsa and Rubongoya going back home and Honorable Luzi is ridiculous. And what is Minsa going to benefit the president of Uganda if she cannot mobilize for herself? If she cannot, after heavy budgets of PDM and Myoga and billboards and what she cannot mobilize for herself, what is she going to benefit the president of Uganda? So they are just rewarding people who are of no use to themselves and to the party they belong to. And to that end, there is no future in electoral processes and democracy.
Joseph Otieno, what you're hearing right now, and I believe what the audience and everyone that is following out there is hearing, is a seemingly different perspective from the everyday narrative of the political talk as well as dispensation. Listening to Joy Chirabo, you hear a voice of a heavily disgruntled young politician whose ability to use the levers that they ought to use in a genuine political dispensation shattered, completely destroyed. What do you hear from Joy's submission?
Chris, you know, when I was coming to your studios, and when you generously asked me to come in today, I was thinking through. But it was about Otieno, the individual with a little bit of experiences here and there, so let me go and fudge my responses, but fudge them with evidence on the basis of my experiences. Even as I was on set and before we came on air, we were obviously chatting with Joy, but having indeed listened to Joy, I'm sort of taken massively aback, but to confirm what you suggest, it's sort of really a worrying thing for our country. But I am compelled to give a contextual background, and that is, Joy, almost certainly before you were born, there ever was an election here in December 1980. I had just about fought it for the first time. Chris, perception is sort of really everything in politics. And to the men and few women in command of this country ought to take what Joy is saying very seriously. And that is that whatever the details, whatever the facts, whatever the realities, it is extremely terrible and very worrying for our country, as you rightly say, that young people who emerge and young, fantastic women like her who emerge to go into politics, to go into elective politics, offer themselves for political leadership and part of the political process, to come out as she suggests. I don't have the details. But the 1980 general elections was after 9 years of Idi Amin, confusion sort of within 2 years leading to the elections. Candidate Museveni didn't want multi-party elections. People were taking positions, believers in the monolithic polity, which they've really applied at the moment. But most importantly, it was analog, pre-analog elections, where the Electoral Commission officials got election results from outside Greater Kampala, Greater Uganda, using police radio networks to respond, to get the details. Yeah. And so it was that bad.
Returning officers reading them on radio.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And these are organized facts that we have at the Electoral Commission and on the archives that the state doesn't want to share with the citizens. But because Uganda then was predominantly DP, and because Uganda then was predominantly DP and opposed to the Uganda People's Congress, which was then the most populous political party with perceptions of Milton Obote, and an engine being pushed by Museveni and DP and some foreign interests in this country, elections are going to be rigged if we gear towards a particular grouping. DP, in a very cheeky way, they started announcing results in Uganda, which by and large was true. Uganda had won, and so they said, we won the national general elections. The outcome of that until today, those of us who are in UPC are still continuing to shed the nonsense that DP won the elections. They did not. But the outcome of that was unnecessary bloodbath in predominant Uganda, centered at Luweero, and the mess in which we ended up with Museveni, a few governments in 1985, and Museveni and their friends, militias controlling Kampala, and he was still struggling to undo those messes. After the return to pluralist politics 20 years ago, by today, really, we should be reaching a situation in which people like the Joys don't only come as people who are convictionist politicians, but with the experience of how to conduct these things. Now, who on earth decided that last week we knock off, turn Uganda into analog, kill social media, run an election in a way in which people don't even know what's happening in the neighborhood? It is going to be very difficult for the state, the authorities, including the Electoral Commission, to dismiss the claims being presented and suggestions being presented by Joy. At every average Ugandan citizen must ask, why did they do it? To date, the explanation hasn't sufficiently been presented, as I realize actually from the publications associated with you. A few lawyers have quite rightly gone to court to challenge these processes. So that's very unfortunate. But then if you look at what Joy is talking about, whatever happened around here, I have stories and incidents, including in my own Tororo, where the amount of violence meted between candidates, and these are candidates of related political organizations, except one person decided to go as an independent. So what would you expect in, say, places in Uganda where the competition very predominantly between two opposing political organizations, regardless of the details? So it's very unfortunate. But Joy makes another important point. It basically kills the idea that somebody should be out down there to celebrate. So even in the possibly likely, some will be happy, possibly likely event that Comrade Museveni won this election, was going to win this election maybe by a reasonable percentage, it's very difficult for people like me to say, congratulations, sir, you did a tough, beautiful job. Simply because we think, come to think of it, he won it, but maybe one or two people's legs were broken either in Kawempu or in the street centers of Kampala, trying to add them 1 or 2, 3 numbers, which you clearly don't need. So in terms of advisors for the guys who are in charge, and in terms of how this guy is operating, there is an impunity, there's a sense of despair. But maybe sometimes I feel there are people in this regime who want ranks. There are people who are competing to become generals, so they want to show that they are tough. And there are those in security services, there are those possibly associated with the Electoral Commission, and there are those who are also associated with the political organization called NRA. We want to make sure that we are yellow, and if you don't, very soon I think they're going to begin putting eggs here to do the egg yolk, in here, right inside us is yellow, to convince the powers that be that we are so yellow that inside us is like yellow, like they say inside most people. Anyway, inside most of them are red UPC anyway, kind of stuff. So it's very unfortunate. For me, who campaigns beyond UPC, and who campaigns for emancipation of women, and who campaigns for emancipation of young people, and who campaigns for pluralist polity, I get concerned because now the conversation we are having is not about issues, it's not about whether or not in the center of Kampala, in Nakao, whether or not Joy did not talk infrastructure sufficiently, whether or not Joy did not talk about whether or not there are sufficient spaces for school-going children, for nurseries, for young parents like herself or so, but rather the manner in which the process has been conducted. And so that's really unfortunate.
Joy Chirabo, you ran as an independent candidate.
Yes.
I'm inclined to ask, what is your philosophy that you lean to? NRM, Democratic Party, FDC, or JEMA?
I do believe that I ran independent because I didn't believe in any of the parties that are available at the moment. Because I do feel that both of them are extremists. I feel like NUP is an extremist, and I also feel that NRM is an extremist, because NRM has been characteristic of very terrible mobilization strategies, where they don't reach the whole community, but they only reach a number of people who already support them. You are mobilizing people who already support you. When will you reach the people who don't? People who don't support you are not your enemies. They have their reasons, and maybe it's because you're not reaching out. And I also feel like NUP is an extremist in ways that they feel that if you are not NUP, you have nothing you are offering. You are not as patriotic. You are not as kind. And if you're not NUP, you mean nothing. And also defending their votes with people's blood. I find that ridiculous. And other things that I don't agree with NUP. And also belonging to these other parties, which at this moment are not leading. It's very hectic, because you have to sell your brand as a person, and you have to sell your party which is hectic, most especially for a young person who is starting their journey. So I decided to stand independent, and it's because I had some trust in the electoral process that if I genuinely can convince the people of Nakawa to believe in me, I shall be given my victory and I shall defend them. But what transpired was the worst, because I realized that we are seen as spectators, us who are not belonging to these leading parties, because NUP has its support base and NRM has the regime, and for us we are just used as grass to take all our support to give to the NRM person so that he can be able to go back and forth with the NUP. It was so terrible. So, and I feel like me coming independent is not a big deal. After all, I lost. Even if they would have counted very, very well, I would have lost. Maybe lost decently, but I would have lost. You understand? I'm not the winner. But I am very worried of the electoral democracy and process of this country. I am so worried of our economy. Because if you should go to Nakawa East, the morale is very low. People are not happy. I was asking people, if Honorable Ruhindi really genuine, let's not talk about being number one, because he wasn't. Let's say he was genuinely number two, which I disagree. If he was genuinely number two, that means he garnered a good, decent number of what? Voters. Where are they? Where are they celebrating on the streets? I can assure you that if I had won this election, I would have a good number of people shouting on the street, saying, our candidate has won. But if you go to Nakawa, you will not see even two people walking, saying, oh yeah, our candidate. Funeral, eh? It's like a funeral. And it is not just a funeral for their candidates losing, but for the future of electoral processes in Uganda. That's why I can say these things on record, that if you know you work for Electoral Commission, start applying for another job. There is no future. Electoral Commission is going to lay off so many workers, since it will not have any work to do. There will be no contenders, neither will there be voters in the coming election. There is nobody with their sane mind that is going to stand for an MP race. And the only people who will stand for Member of Parliament will be NRM and mad people. And those two contenders will give you very little work. And some of you are going to be laid off. And the only people who are going to march to the polling station are paid people. And trust me, the government cannot pay more than 1,000 people. They will beg people to come out of their houses to vote. Because I can tell you the voter turnout was, leave alone these results they're going to display for you, Simanyi 8,000, and because they say Ruhindi got 18,000 and Mufumbiro got 15,000, and for us we are somewhere there in so many zeros. Now, if you, that means that approximately 30, let's say, okay, approximately 34,000 people voted in Nakawa. I can assure you, half of those people voted. Because the elections was characterized with no people at the polling station. Men were more than women, which is unprecedented. Women are always the majority. You would find that women are half the men that are present, and the people were very few. Now imagine, after this false declaration, that, me in my opinion, 15,000 people voted, or even let's say 16,000. With those people, we are going to have less than 10,000 people voting. So if you're in the electoral commission, start applying for other jobs. Other people who should start applying for other jobs are people in the presidential mobilization team. Because you have no job. You are mobilizing and it's not enough, you have to rig. The president is not going to release any more money for mobilizing if he has to rig for his people. So I don't say anyone who benefits. Media houses, you are facing a shutdown very soon. People are going to lose interest in following politics because they are predictable, they are planned, they are controlled, they are no longer free. You understand? So what are you going to report about what? About what the state has put in place and determined?
I must hasten to add that we as broadcasters and media houses were at pains during the release of the provisional results, where even at 71.65%, you are not at any one point in time required to say that President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has registered a landslide victory in the polls, because it is not your mandate to actually say such a declaration. It doesn't mean that at that point in time there would be some miracle that would guarantee another candidate to come and overtake the president. The facts are clear, but still, even when the facts were clear, we were constrained by directives and not necessarily law. But let me leave the media out of this for now. We have our own conversations, and we shall continue to work within the difficulties that we do to ensure that the community and the nation is served, especially with regard to information and facts on the ground. When you listen to the apathy, the despondency that Joy Chirabo alludes to or exudes as she speaks, the commercialization of our political processes and the seeming dash into politics like it's some income finish line, as in, let me go there, let me get the money. It makes the mobilization strategy that she pours scorn on to be the everything people go for. It's about the money, let me go for the money. If I can guarantee that, then the president will like me, because my mobilization strategy is about ensuring that I pay, and then people do respond to what the president wants. Uganda People's Congress was accused of so many atrocities and irregularities 1980 and in the run-up to that particular poll. The NRM seems to find itself in that particular position as a government. You've been in this as a UPC stalwart. Is there any particular message that you can share with those that hold state power right now?
I have, at the introduction, been very generous to NRA and offered them our extremely unfortunate and unjustified experience as the winners and convincing winners of 1980 general elections. And I was telling these guys that after 40 years in power, it's absolutely nonsensical for you to be where we were circumstantially placed, and even in error. When we did not conduct the 1980 general elections, UPC did not. we were basically participants who emerged victorious. And by the way, 40 years after this NRA thing, Joy, you better know, NRA has not proven a single iota of an election rigging or a result from one single parliamentary seat out of 126 where they're supposed to have won but they did not, or DP was supposed to have won and they did not.
In 1980?
In 1980, they haven't. In fact, as I was preparing this morning, I remembered that there was a Kampala seat, because I wanted to give context. There was a Kampala seat which UPC ideally ought to have won, but they did not because of irregularities, of overwhelming overzealousness of DP members, supporters, you know. And it is suggested by the leadership of UPC at the time that they considered it under the dynamics, and we'll discuss another time, not to push to prosecute for that. And if they did, they will grant for it. And if there was a by-election, UPC was going to win it. But generally, Uganda, Kampala was always the most cosmopolitan, and actually, to our credit, we should continue having Kampala cosmopolitan, where candidates from different identities without prejudice come in and political parties can go ahead and compete. But immediately outside the then 4 constituencies, now about 10 or so, in Kampala, the rest we knew were DP strongholds, predominantly without prejudice, Uganda at the time. 1980 elections took place after 9 years of Idi Amin's military dictatorship. Idi Amin and Moses Ali. By the congratulations, Moses Ali. You know, 1980 election took place 18 months after we had 3 interim administrations. So a sense of quote instability. But 1980 elections took place where UPC was a player. The interim administration of the military commission was headed by Mwanga and Mr. Museveni, you know, who conducted this election. UPC was not a party, but UPC was a leading contender. So we can't be compared with NRA, who usurped power by force, controlled power for 10 years without elections, organized elections where parties were banned another 10 years, and another 20 now. So 40 years NRA has been in power, meaning whatever you do, there is no way in which you not say that this guy should have organized infrastructure. I was speaking to some friends of mine in NRA, you know, senior guys in NRA, and said, look, what is it, what threat is it that you, after 40 years, and then you boast that you're among the most powerful military powers, and they really like boasting, sometimes arrogantly, you know, experts in militarism and organization, and to their credit, they've held power for 40 years. What is it that you cannot mitigate, that you need to kill the internet first? You know, a parliamentary candidate for Nakar is, I'd like to hear from her. Somebody decides that you want to kill internet and kill the national economy. I want to ask, was the governor of Bank of Uganda consulted on this? Where was the Minister for Finance? Or was he thinking about Mabatis, you know, in his backyard? What was it? Did they have a consultation? You guys as the fourth estate, you are absolutely at the heart of this. We citizens as the fifth estate, we insist that the fourth estate is part of the conversation in this. And I recognize why Chris has got to pull back, but that's part of the climate we have at the moment. Actually, the fourth estate guys, maybe your economics correspondents, ought to be giving us the analysis of the breakdown on the loss on the national coffers by the cutting off internet, children who study, people who work predominantly online, companies that sold off, companies that work are registered here and they're global, friends of mine who could not send money. I have had cases where, you know, people were rescued by drives several tens of miles to just give somebody money because they didn't have food. Part of the preparation for that is the nonsensical shambles by this. You can't relate that to whatever happened in 1980. In fact, I brought you the fact that amidst all those, because of the breakdown under Idi Amin and the interim administrations, these guys had to use police communications to convey results, say, from, say, Gulu into Kampala, but it was fine. Now, if you go into the process, and I think I told your program before the elections, Joy, that apparently the electoral commission composition of the time was agreed between 4 political parties then participating, including NRA, which was then UPM, you know. So the composition of the electoral commission was not contested. This one, no, it's a fudged, almost monolithic, almost close to cadreship arrangement. So you really can't compare. But those I'm saying that having looked through that experience, what Joe was saying, and what Pastor Water was saying, do you need to go to these extremes? Must you win certain parliamentary seats by any means necessary? Must you add the numbers by any means necessary in order to justify, in quote, you win? It's very, very difficult to say. So, Chris, it's completely comparable. But what has happened? Thank you, Jesus. And I do God. So it's not blasphemous. Thank you, Jesus. What has happened is that UPC has been completely liberated, completely delivered from the nonsense and the mess of the 1980s, because there is not an iota of anything that happened in this election that you can compare with that. And having done again and again, and you compare with 2021, the moral basis on which NRA guys came got lost completely. But one message is, after this 45 years from 1980, I'm just a little bit tired. I'm just hoping that there is somebody's watching and somebody will review and somebody examine their conscience, including some of them are locally, by the way, you know, or at least they say locally.
Born again.
Born again, you know. And for me, if I went to the seminary, I would be a contender for the Pope now. You know, but certainly, you know, whatever. So some of these guys need to review their conscience, you know, and we begin a process post this election, Joy, that it's unfortunate to the incidents you guys are reporting in Kampala of deaths in the heart of the city today. You know, if it was in 1980, they would blame it on Obote and poor UPC, you know, but there you go. So we need to go through this process, review, listen to the likes of the Joy Chirabos, and begin a process, and unfortunately it's a very difficult process of transition, where we're able to have a possibility that Joy in the next 5-10 years is able to go ahead and actively participate in politics, where she can freely say that, look, I'm going to Nakawa, but this is what I'm offering on interest rates, this is what I'm offering on taxation, this is what I'm offering on access for small businesses, and this is what I'm offering as remedies for, you know, public health facilities in Kampala or networks, things like that, that she wins, or if she doesn't win, she is able to go ahead and say, Chris, you're the winner, well done, my brother. It was a hotly contested thing. My line is open. If you want advice from me, you know, I'll give you some of my thoughts in terms of what I thought we'd be able to do. I want to wait for that to happen. And, you know, this republic is big enough for us. But I know NRA guys are so entitled. Some of them are so dwarfed that they don't know anything else but arrogant power. So it's not surprising that some of the people who resolve that you shall return Uganda to pre-Ochelo's grandfather's analog, they have no clue what it does. And in any case, some of them were not on analog anyway because they prepared themselves. So they continued as if life's a normal. But no, somebody needs to emerge to provide leadership for this country and recognize that their grandchildren, and I say this and I declare, their grandchildren, whether they like it or not, their grandchildren will go to the same school with my grandchildren. Let them just think about it. Joy
Chirabo, what are the available avenues for collaboration, for dialogue, in order to begin the process of rectifying what is wrong? In the spaces for youth leaders, do you see opportunities for engagement that are geared towards, first and foremost, realigning the mindset among the young people in order to think of politics not as a finish line for business, but as a vocation that ought to put you at service of the people?
That's a big conversation, because the youth are raised by the
very people we are complaining about.
Yes. So they're not laying a good example. Right now, money is the order of the day. If you don't have money, that's the reason you lost. You don't have money, you have nothing. So the youth also, they are struggling between being loyal to money or being loyal to your country. And way forward, at the end of the day, there's always a way forward.
There must be a way forward.
There must be. Yeah. I would urge the NRM government two things. I would urge the NRM government that this path you've taken is unsustainable. Even if someone is your supporter and they love NRM and they want a future for NRM, they would say this, that it's unsustainable to work like this. And they should go back to the drawing board. And it doesn't even help them as a party, because nurturing and helping such people who are unable to mobilize and giving them things on a silver plate is actually making them worsen and losing their grip on certain constituencies. And you can't force people forever. You can force people for a while. One of the things I've said that the greatest attribute of President Museveni is his tolerance and conflict management, and being able to work with people he disagrees with. And that is one trait and attribute that has made him stand out. And that is one trait that has brought him to power yet again. And even the votes he has attained that he had lost last time, he got them because of that. So him taking this path is losing the one attribute that makes him stand out on that presidential ballot.
What stops him as the top manager to use those traits and attributes to manage the forces? Sometimes there are forces within NRM that are allegedly accused of being able to do those. What stops him as the overall commander to rein on these forces, number one? And number two, if you don't mind, on the youth. What is it, quite clearly, that is it?
You
that
seemed that was a question you were putting to Joy Chirabo. Allow her answer it maybe, and then you can submit further.
Fair enough,
I don't understand why he doesn't, because to be honest, I don't believe that he wanted to rig. A person who wanted to rig cannot put that much money he put in mobilization. And a person who wanted to rig would not have toured the whole country at that age of his trying to garner support. So I don't believe that his intent from the beginning was to rig. But it having happened has even brought his victory to be questioned, and also made the little support he had garnered in Central to decline. That's why I feel like it's not sustainable. That is number one. And I do feel that for him to continue standing out on that ballot, he should go back to, first of all, if you can all agree with me, President Museveni being the president of Uganda for 40 years has always been because he tolerates sharing space with other people. Sharing space, allowing NUP with all how they go about their businesses, allowing them to have their victories.
And if you would not agree.
No, I'm not speaking for NUP. That is my personal opinion. Allowing them to win their seats if they have won them. Allowing them to have their salaries, allowing them to have their benefits, regardless of their opinion, is why we all respect him. And is why most people, even people who don't agree with him, get to that ballot and tick him. So for sustainability, he shouldn't lose those. And I don't know what he admires about other world leaders that actually taking the path he is taking right now. Because if you look at those other countries where they have zero tolerance for opposition, you can see the economies are crumbling, the morale is down, there is no joy, there is no future. So I do not see why he's losing his ways. I do not see why he's losing the gains. Actually, the theme, for, you know.
Interesting.
Let's talk about that.
Very quickly as we wind up this conversation.
I have something issue on young people, which you can link to the gains because it's related in a way. What is it that should be done? And is indeed the case that it's the burden of responsibility that lies with the young guys, that they should consciously detox from monetization and commit themselves to doing what the likes of Museveni arguably say they did those days, offering themselves for what is right as they prepare for their future, because the Musevenis will be retired in Rwachitura not so far away from today.
I do believe that it starts with one person. I, for one, I cannot speak for everyone, but I do believe that for any country to stay together, there has to be sacrifice. And you don't wait for 20 people in order for you to sacrifice. You start alone. You contribute. And to that I concede my defeat publicly, that I lost. And whoever was declared the one, which is Honorable Hindi, I'm willing to work with him for a better Nakao. He's the one in office. He's all that we have right now as we speak. So how do we get the most from this term? Two, protecting the gains, like what I wanted to say. The theme for the NRM this time was protecting the gains. But if you ask me, I feel like they're taking away the gains. The gains of the NRM and as of the country was freedom of speech, the liberalized economy, everything was on a shutdown, the electoral process was a sham. So I feel like even the gains we were counting on, we are losing them. So, but to that end, I am willing to work with whoever has won for the better Nakawa, and that's the way forward.
Thank you very much, Joy Chirabu. That's a very inspirational message coming from a youth leader. Joseph Ochieno, the Electoral Commission has rolled out the calendar for the series of other elections as part of the general election for 2026. And I do not know whether the fears that have emerged out of the presidential and the parliamentary elections, or the the discontent, I do not know whether it is something that we should look out for in the various elections of special interest groups. Yesterday we had the workers' MPs being elected. There wasn't a lot of drama because that is electoral college voting. But across the others, which are similar, I do not know whether fears, including the employ of money, is something that we should look out and pray does not actually rear its ugly head.
Unfortunately, money is a constant. The money element is a constant and will be. You get messages.
Both as a necessity and as an evil.
Unfortunately, an imperative evil that is now necessitating outcome. So that will be. Usually, the most contested, where people go mad because they want ranks and other things, is the presidential elections. And because they're normally linked to parliamentary elections, those are the most contested. And normally the turnouts, generally across the world where systems sort of relate, they will be the much more contested, and the turnout will always be higher. This one will be lower. But on the basis of whatever's happening, I think unfortunately that the contestations are going to continue. The violence may be different because in any case, it would appear the forces coercive forces that monopolize violence seem to be geared towards particular individuals, and those may be phased off for the moment. How that plans out is difficult to tell, but usually people will determine it on the basis of the results at the top, and that's why my opinion about the format of these elections is important, because sometimes people will be psychologically driven. This party has won so much, so maybe the candidates for that party are the good people to be able to be done with. I mean to be supported. But in some of the upcountry sub-regions where there is a much more wider consciousness, people will still vote for the candidates that they had already determined, and so that will happen. Whatever the case, it's just interesting to say that maybe I use the opportunity to congratulate some of my colleagues who won, and some of my very good friends who lost. But whatever the case, the most important one is a pending by-election coming out where the government side chief whip is in contention with the UPC candidate, and I am hoping and feel confident that the UPC candidate will emerge leader, and the UPC will emerge as the third largest political party in order. Yes, with about 11, 12 members of parliament, which is an impressive under the crude circumstance. But I think whatever happens, people need to listen to what Joy is saying. We just need to make sure that whatever happens, that we look to the future of this country rather than short-term gains.
All right. Thank you very much, Joseph Ochieno, seasoned political commentator and in your own words, should be president of the Uganda People's Congress. Many thanks, Joy Chirabu, former independent candidate in the race for Nakawa East Member of Parliament. That was won by Honorable Fred Ruhindi. Now, the intelligence and reports coming through from across the region is that Uganda, being what it is in light to the regional equilibrium, there are justifications from the security and the Uganda Communications Commission on the shutdown, but some actors say the UCC played into the machinations of an executive that started laying the ground for this eventuality a while back, and that the stability of Uganda is not just a sovereign imperative, it underwrites regional commerce, communications and security, and the blanket shutdown caused more harm than good. It only impacts the Ugandan economy not only impacts Ugandan economy, but also the regional matrix as well. For instance, in just 24 hours after the blockade, cargo handlers at the port of Mombasa suspended clearing and transportation of cargo destined for Uganda and other landlocked countries in the region. Clearing agents and transporters said Kampala's move to cut communication between them and drivers disrupted cargo documentation as well as clearing processes. So the cost to the economy might not be evident as of now, but like Joseph Ocheno suggested, our economics correspondents are putting together really huge deep dives into exactly what this means, and we shall be able to get perspective on the cost to the economy. For now though, allow me go to Stephen Mbide has some updates on the incident at that is William Street. My apologies as I grapple with the vagaries of our weather. That report will be coming in a little bit later. What we do know right now is that a young man was